that goes back to my point on tech trying to kill media.
Welcome to episode 35 of the Data Binkowski podcast. My guest today is SportsGrid's senior data analyst, Arturo Gaiati, and we're talking Twitter and the NBA. So Arturo, welcome back to the podcast.
Welcome back. Yeah, after many false starts today. Today has been complicated for us to get
Well, we're also both like with, COVID and the flus going around. And I literally couldn't podcast for, since almost the last time I did it. So I probably sound a little stuffy, but that's not unusual for me. I hope you're feeling better. I'm feeling better. So we're back, and I want to get to the NBA stuff, obviously, but I want to talk about Twitter because normally I would start off every episode by telling everybody go follow us and follow the podcast there. But I stopped using it. So, and you and I both went over Mastodon. So if you want to follow us, we're on the same server, but if you learn how it works, you can follow anybody. You have to put in the URL or the handle. So it's at BinkowskI at mastodon.social for me and at American Numbers at mastodon.social for Arturo. Give us a follow there. Same handles, and you can find us there. There are free tools. There's tools that are out there to help you migrate to if you want to find your followers. There's a nice
little site I follow for like different electronic stuff called Tom's Hardware, as article on moving from Twitter to Mastodon, which is pretty good. You can effectively port your follows if they're on Mastodon. Sorry, if they're already on Mastodon, you port it from Twitter. It takes a little bit to get used to, finding people. They're going to be on different servers, but if you do, you can follow them. There's some, it's going to be a little bit quieter. There are I think that the one thing that we haven't figured out yet, and I don't think that's great, is the DM. It's a little bit strange. We eventually figured it out, but it's a little bit strange. It feels like it's going to be very easy for you to accidentally send the DM to everyone, right?
Yeah.
If you're not paying attention. But it's ultimately, I like the vibe on it in terms of so getting to the topics that we were talking about before the call, the reasons why we're leaving Twitter, right? And you said
before you plug something real quick, is that you can also find more of my stuff now that I'm not writing 100 tweets a day. I'm actually doing starting on more long form content, including more podcasting, including more blog posts. So if you go to my website, davidbinkowski.com, you will see stuff there, including the reasons I left Twitter. It's spelled out right there, and you can check it out. So Arturo and I both left. We still have accounts there. I personally just don't want someone to steal my username and impersonate me. That's literally the reason I'm keeping it. I have no hope for the app as it goes, but we'll talk about what's going on over there.
I think the trick is, and we were talking about this before, I don't think any of the sites has reached critical mass to actually replace the system. Some site will. Effectively right now, we were talking about this before, and I think before the call, and I was mentioning that some of this has a lot to do with similar things going on with AI kind of replacing generating art. How effectively you're taking all this work that people are doing and feeding into the computer and generating this work that is corporate owned that doesn't actually profit anyone. So these are systems that we should have these systems. And I mentioned that Karl Marx talked about when you put in automation, you need to have socialism, so you can have services, so that when the really rich people try to steal the work from the bottom people, they can actually, society benefits from the technology. And I think in this particular case, to Twitter, what it applies is Twitter is effectively an information media source, right? And the beauty of it was that it was a free system, and essentially you could come in without a sponsor or a rich sponsor or a sugar daddy, and you could get found. If you were a cool person on Twitter posting cool content, right, people could find you, you could get popular, you could monetize that, profit, which means that cool content creators had a reason to get on Twitter and basically produce content. You had a reason to go on there so you could find these people, and it was interesting. But effectively, tech really doesn't like that kind of thing. Tech doesn't want to have journalists, media, and people create stuff outside of their purview, outside of control, and they want their cut. So effectively, if you're familiar with Musk was the partner of Peter Thiel. If you're familiar with Peter Thiel is, Peter Thiel killed Gawker, right? And there's a whole thing. I think his name is Eli Ross, had this long thread explaining kind of like tech really does want to kill media as an independent thing. And what they really want, if you look at what Musk is kind of doing, is they want to turn Twitter into kind of a corporate controlled media source where it's really hard for the small artist to kind of basically monetize his own content by himself, right? So like they're setting this up so that like, if you buy a blue check mark, you can now vote, you can now influence what gets shown by the algorithm, right? So what does that mean? That means if if Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or Donald Trump or like Disney wants to kind of emphasize or de-emphasize someone in terms of content, they can just come in like AstroTurf, like 5,000 followers with like blue check marks and run you off the algorithm or basically trigger you up through this network, right? So it's going to be really easy for you to ask their content and manage content on that if you have money. That's really kind of what they're setting up. They want people who have money want to be able to control what's being shown on Twitter. And they want to basically not have people just come in and be able to criticize them without doing that. The problem with that is they're also making it harder for these content creators who haven't discovered, the cool content creators, to produce content and monetize it. That means that these people are going to go somewhere else. I've seen a lot of content creators go on Mastodon, which is why I went there. There's also people going on Post. So effectively, and there are other systems too. There's like a crypto one that Jack is pushing, which is weird, and I don't trust it because it's crypto. But effectively, one of these systems will reach critical mass, and that will be the new system because you need a place where the content creators feel safe posting their content and making money from it. And the content creators ultimately are the thing that drives whether or not you're if there are no cool content creators on Twitter, what the fuck am I on Twitter? Now,
Right.
The reason I am still on Twitter is because I'm on Mastodon. Mastodon, I don't think has the volume yet to be completely, and they've still had some bugs there or not. I think from a point of view of getting media stories and getting news stories, it's cool, and curated feed is cool. It's terrible for live events. Twitter is still great for the World Cup final because there's all these people on it. But again, these things are exponential. There's going to be a point where one of these sites will eventually hit this barrier, just getting the users. And then people will go well, it's cool now, right? So I can go here and get all these there's a bunch of content creators on Mastodon that I used to follow and already left Twitter that all of a sudden are posting. I'm oh, this is cool. And I can get small again, it's not 100% solution.
My thing is
effectively you can see the end of Twitter. You can basically look at it and go you can see how this ends, right?
Yeah. Andreessen Horowitz tried to start their own tech version of a news site, and they're also an investor in Musk's Twitter. They're also an investor in Post, so they're hedging their bets at this point because they shut down the site that they started because no one believed it was all corporate bullshit. So that's to me and Mastodon, by the way, someone set up a website where you can follow every journalist called presscheck.org. So again, I believe, and I was talking to Christopher Bowsey from Bot Sentinel about this. He's going to be a guest on the pod soon as well. But he's launching a competitor called Spoutum, and he had within about 2 weeks 100,000 people sign up for the beta of that app. So is that enough to take over Twitter? No, but if enough people, I told him this privately, and you see it happening with Mastodon. If the content creators and the journalists and the celebrities and the athletes leave Twitter, they're fucked. They will have nobody. That's the whole thing about Twitter was that these are people who are doing cool things in real life or online. That was kind of the whole vibe. Twitter, if you remember, started in 2006. I joined in January 2007 as an early adopter to see what it was about for clients, like I did for every platform back then. And I knew people there. I was working at a global agency, so we were spending money and they wanted our money. So, I knew people there. I knew employee number 9. It's a small world. And so I got verified pretty quickly. And, it was very different back then. And back then, people were blogging and people would have RSS readers and they would use those to find good writers that they then subscribed to and would read their stuff. And it's obviously evolved now where all of it has to be monetized on Substack and all these other platforms. But it was about long form writing and having the opportunity to do that writing for the world to read. And
I
that
think
changed. Twitter changed it. Twitter fundamentally changed writing because people started doing, Twitter is called a microblogging service. So Steve Rebell, who from Edelman way back in the day was like, this is going to kill blogs. He said people are going to prefer to do what they call quote unquote snackable content, meaning it's pithy, it's quick, it's just let me get it off my chest or put it out there. And you saw Facebook did the same with the status update and the timeline. You saw everybody copying this microblogging format.
The other part is as things happen, the value of Twitter was like it allowed for real time democratic reporting for a lot of this stuff. Like you could, when they when the whole Minnesota riot thing happened, or when like January 6th, people were on the floor, like, putting out things and putting out video, it combined with the cell phone cameras and whatnot to kind of make it so that like it was really hard to kind of like do this information. A lot of, you can still do it, but it raised the bar on that.
And part of what also during that time, the number of journalists, public relations people was way less than it is today. I think right now it's 20-1 of public relations people to journalists. Back then it was like 3-1 when this all launched.
Media and like for some reason print media let them do this, right? Like Facebook is like an insurance company. They're not actually adding any fucking value. They're just coming in and like bogarting all the ads. And I don't know why you need a third party service. And really if you wanted to say print media, if you actually cared about it, you would cut out Facebook. Basically, you would set up your own ad service.
Was it Australia did that, right? Australia, I think they taxed them. I think they taxed them or something.
Ultimately, and I mentioned this, like the whole thing is the things that is wrong with our culture, the things that is wrong with our media situation is we're in a situation where like, because, Reagan ramped up capitalism to win the Cold War. Fine. Like he took out but effectively that means all these capitalists or these like big money people like don't get taxed and, they don't, that money doesn't go to infrastructure or building shit. They just goes to their pocket. We're basically counting on like the private industry to come in like and put in these services that like the government and like and people used to put in, and they don't have an incentive to do that unless they're making money, right? So so rather than getting like a good highway system, you're getting like a shitty like toll highway that is poorly maintained, right? Or like rather than getting like an electronic power grid, it's like this will be near and dear yard. Rather than like a nice, solid, serviceable like power grid, we're getting like
and cheap
power grid, which is basically grifted. And like, so I was actually like having a conversation with somebody who's saying like, what we need to reclaim as a concept? Tax and spend liberal, right? So I was like, oh, tax and spend. Like, okay, so what's wrong with like, so tax and spend liberal or like, this corruption and pork barrel. Okay, so how is that money being spent, right? So if I give $1 million to this, like, tax and spend liberal, or I give it to like Elon Musk, how is that money being spent? So if I give it to the tax and spend liberal, he's spending it on infrastructure projects and or buying shit in his local county, and he's building highways or building schools. And then that money goes to a middle class dude who's also building projects. So that money like moves, like, yes, it's wasteful, but it's the kind of waste that you're getting. It's like
it fuels an economy.
Wasteful,
it actually
but it fuels the economy, fuels growth. It's going to a place you can see it. Shit, potholes get fixed. Whereas if I get to Musk is like, I don't know, fucking buying stock options, right? Or like lighting money afire on Twitter, or using it to pay the interest on his, like service the interest on his loan, or buy a politician. It's like, we have to start like, we have to stop thinking about this like, these like Tony Stark, these billionaires are going to say, no, we, you need to start building these services, and you need to assume that like, we used to know this, guys who are like super duper duper rich are not in it to help society, right? They're not, They didn't get rich because they were kind and generous and like charitable. No, fuck no, that's not it's exactly why they're like the opposite of why they're. So effectively, rather than relying on like, if this is a critical infrastructure service, then we should put some taxes in and like set up the infrastructure. And we're like, oh, but it's going to be wasteful. Yes, like private industry is not going to build it at the same quality, and they're also going to make it as grifty as possible. Versus if I actually, okay, so it is going to be more wasteful to like have some like government come in and like doing it like Twitter, like NPR. Like that's like, look, set it up like NPR, have it with like a board of like, oh, it's gonna be so yeah. So what is that money being wasted? It's wasting on a thing that's gonna create jobs. So is that wasteful as a society? No. I mean, like, it is going to be more expensive, but that money's going to be spent on things that you're going to see, you as a person living in society. So that's it. We have to start rethinking this stuff and going like, if it is a critical service or is something that like everybody need, then okay, why is it something that we are relying on private industry, which has no incentive to do it other than profit, as opposed to our government structures, which are supposed to serve our needs, right? I think that's kind of like where it is. And I think what's going to end up happening, we'll see this is, you mentioned Australia, places like Australia, China, Europe are going to start doing this stuff as a service and locking us out. I do think that like things like it'll be something else in Twitter, and Twitter's going to effectively it's going to end up like MySpace, right? It's going to get like, it's going to lose the content creators, and like it's going to get blocked out in Europe, and it's going to get blocked out in China because they're going to like why do I watch? It's like I can set up my own server, and that's already started. So I mean,
I think well, first and foremost, clearly he's only acting like a clown on social to keep people around, while it's a sprint internally for him to try to build his WeChat, his version of WeChat. That's his goal. So as he's sprinting ahead and making people sleep at the office and all that, he's actually on the app, acting like an idiot, banning journalists, doing all this, making it into a circus. And like I said, I have no interest in that. I don't want to participate. I'm not going to create content that he can monetize. Like, I'm out. But I think he's in a dangerous position, like you said, because all these countries are going to say, we're going to build our own or have our own thing.
Well, it's even more than that. Like, so why is Tesla more valuable than like the next 15 car companies, right? There's no reasonable explanation. It's a shitty car. There's no reason like that it should be worth even 20% as much as Toyota, right? It's like there's like if you tell me with a straight face that you think that like Tesla will dominate the electric market more than say Toyota in 5 years, I will laugh. Like you are not a serious person.
Right.
Effectively, it's the myth of Elon Musk. He sold himself as this like grander than life figure that was really smart. He's never been that, right? But this has punctured his mysticism, which is why his stock for Tesla is collapsing, which is why he's acting right. I mean, ultimately, I do think like Theo, he believes in controlling the media and doing everything to weaken the media, because ultimately the weaker the media is, the weaker journalism, of course, the state is, the more these like, essentially bolcho capitalists can like get away with shit, right? That's what they are. They're like, there's no reason for a guy to be as rich as Elon. He adds zero value. There's no reason for him to be that. And what they're, it's the whole thing, the whole story with that journalist he banned because she asked her a question. And it was a valid question he banned. Like, ultimately,
water pouring.
Sorry, I was gonna say that ultimately, like, there's a good tweet from a guy. It's Jason Pargan, who's the author of John Dies at the End. Actually, novel series. It's fun, but he has a thing where he's basically saying, "Look, like, I don't get any engagement on Twitter. Like if the how successful my next novel is going to be is going to depend on how good I get it." Right? He's just like, look, it's like so there is no, for cool content creators who are good follows, like, have no incentive to be on Twitter. Like, ultimately, like, if you're on Twitter, all you're doing is, the negatives vastly outweigh the positive. If you're a content creator. So like, eventually something will replace it, because people do need a place to share their work. It used to be like, fan signs and like, like all papers, and like something will come up, like whether it's Mastodon or Post or whatever it is, right? It'll come up. Won't be Twitter, because it's like once you burn the artist, you're never getting it back, right? So effectively, it's not dead yet, but you can see that it's going to die, right? It's like you're looking and going like, well, this doesn't make any sense, and he's already pissed off all the people he needed to like guarantee good content, so I don't see how it recovers.
Right. And even on I mentioned that journalist site earlier. If you look on there, I mean, it's filled with publications in places you trust, including NPR, including, it is not It's not like it's some random. You don't see any of. It's funny because you don't see really any right wing publications hopping over to Mastodon. Because they know they're just going to stick with Elon because he's going to boost their stuff. So I feel like once you lose that credibility, the same thing with the artists. I feel like as an app, once you become unquotable, so to speak, then he's gonna lose coverage. And if the only thing that's driving, the only thing driving coverage around Twitter right now is what a jackass he's being, and how he's showing the world what a dumb fucking CEO he is, and that's why Tesla's stock is tanking. So they're saying he may be he wants to find a replacement, and it doesn't matter. You lost it. You lost it. So let's move on to the NBA because there's a lot of good. It's been a very interesting season. A lot of parity in the West, and the dominant team, the Celtics, will be world beaters. Last time I podcasted, and now they're on this little slide. So
well, I mean,
there's been a lot of.
Tatum's been out, so like it's a little bit of.
We're going to get to that. We're going to get to why that is in a minute. But I want to start off the conversation about quick hits, talking about teams that you think are exceeding or underachieving, expectations.
I think, I like the Pelicans coming into the season. I thought like if Zion, you're getting like healthy Zion, that's the team that you're going to be heard from. That's been the case.
Yep.
I thought the Grizzlies were coming in underrated, though they were the number 1 seed in the West last season, but they were, they were still coming in underrated. That's been the case. I think that Kings have been surprised. The Clippers like pulling together and being still good. Same thing with the Jazz. So it's been the West has been interesting. I think the Warriors are more the 2020. So the Warriors are a victim of the same thing that killed them 2 seasons ago. Their player value. They just fucking stick to their guns when they shouldn't on players that are not good, right?
Yep.
And for some reason, obviously Wise got hurt, and they went out and got the players they needed to get last season. So they had the perfect supporting cast for staff, but they went they did not do that between seasons, right? So it's very strange, and they they didn't. That draft, that Wiseman draft, if you look at that draft, they should have drafted, if they hadn't drafted, they should have drafted a wing or a play replacement, right? And if you, which is whatever we thought they were going to do. And if that's the case, you would have either wound up with LaMelo, and if you didn't like LaMelo and traded down, you would have wound up with Halliburton or Devin Vassell, right? So, but no, they wound up with Wiseman. So that draft, even though they did win the title last, right? Because for whatever reason, they went out and got the right players. But they went, they immediately went back in the other direction. And I don't see how they're going to survive with Steph being out the time he's going to be out, and then playing Wiseman, right? So it's going to I think they're going to have to go through unless they come in from the the 9-10 spot, but that didn't work years ago, right?
Right.
It puts a lot of pressure on these guys staying healthy. You can't rest them. And ultimately, you want them healthier later in the season, not have to play like crazy people to close out the season. And basically, Steph broke his butt 2 years ago. I mean, there's a lot of interesting teams in what I call decision points. Do the Raptors blow it up, right? Do the Pacers go all in this season, right? Same thing with the Heat. Are the Heat good enough to keep kind of hanging around, or should they make some changes, right?
Yeah.
Also, there's a lot of teams in interesting positions, right? I think what's the clearly dominant teams, we know Milwaukee and Boston are the best 2 teams in the East, right?
I would say probably in the NBA. You probably them and everything. It's those 2, and then whoever is healthiest and playing the best in the West. That's your NBA Finals right there. One of those 2 and someone.
The Clippers remain interesting if they can somehow stay healthy, but we haven't seen this team kind of they are what they are. I mean, it's the same argument I have with my first tweet of the season is always I give shit to Kevin Pelton as the 538-minute guy. So why are you projecting Anthony Davis and LeBron James to play 7 games? No, they got hurt. It's dude,
they always get hurt.
LeBron misses 50% of games, and for the Lakers, Anthony Davis plays 50 games, and effectively that's what they're on pace. Right? Yeah. And Anthony Davis is playing he was playing incredibly well.
It was amazing.
He got turned on and then he got hurt again. His feet got hurt. And the problem with that is his injuries are like the problem with Anthony Davis. The injuries, like, so he's carrying too much weight, and then he gets hurt, and the injuries he has like make it harder for him to stay in like proper game shape. Right? It's
Yeah.
similar to what happened like Shaq's career. So do I expect Anthony Davis to be the same guy he was when he got hurt when he comes back? Probably not. It's taking him a while to work himself back into it. And they don't have any they're what 13 and 17 and they're gonna be what? They're gonna be like 10, 15 games under 500 by the time he comes back. If
Yeah.
like depends on how much LeBron plays. Um
Well, I
so
thought the Clippers, so there's two things on those two teams in particular. I thought the Clippers, if you look at their schedule, they play a ridiculous amount of games before the All-Star break. And then after the All-Star break, they only have like 20 games, something crazy like that. Like they have a very small amount of games after the All-Star break. So that's weird.
I mean
that's weird.
Full credit to Ty Lue because this is why having like one of the top 5 coaches in the NBA is really good. Because the Clippers are always, even if like they have to rest their guys, do kind of like patch together rosters, they're still gonna, 4th, 5th seed. Like if they're the 4th, 5th seed at the end of the season and like Kawhi and Paul George are healthy, then yeah, they're very realistic to come out of the West because
Yep.
that raises their ceiling, particularly if Kawhi is healthy. And then they have all these guys, and then Ty Lue is really good in these series. Like, so people forget, like, he came close to making the finals 2 years ago with like a patched together team. And so that's kind of it's like having Spo. It's kind of an edge. It's like you have this guy that it can keep you in contention, and then you get something. The slight difference between Miami and the Clippers, I'm not sure Miami can get fully healthy with the squad. They probably need to rejigger it because they are a little bit more down the age curve than the Clippers, right?
Yep.
Nothing against Miami. I mean, they got to the finals. They've gotten multiple conference finals recently, and it's just I do think that there's a couple guys on that team that are just a little bit too long too.
Yeah. As the Lakers, though, I mean, just looking at their schedule, just looking at
it's evil.
The last several games that they play. Okay. They went on this like winning streak, so right. So and when they won, they beat Detroit, which you should. And LeBron James, they went to Detroit. LeBron James looked like the old LeBron James. He didn't miss. I forget what percentage he shot that game, but he basically didn't miss. They lose to Boston in overtime. They beat Denver. They beat Washington, which that team is another. That's we're going to talk about them as a blow it up candidate. And then they lose to Phoenix and AD's out. So I mean, I have not seen when they have their runs. They beat San Antonio, they beat Washington, they beat bad teams, Detroit, Brooklyn when they were in disarray. I'm not, if they're at full strength, sure, but
I mean,
that's a very big question mark.
I think their coach has done a decent job at not having the wheels completely fall off the team.
Oh, absolutely. The Westbrook situation alone.
Yeah, but they're still playing like a 35 win team, and I mean, again, I think it's going to be really tricky for them to even get into the play-in, right? Seriously, because I think the 10 seed in the looking at this right now, let's project this out. So right now, the 10th seed in the West would be Dallas at about 500, right? So I think if you get into the play-in, you're probably going to have to win 41, 42 games. Yep. There's a good chance you're going to, I think some of the teams are going to get a little more. I mean, dude, if Toronto blows it up and a couple of the other kind of give up on the season, then yeah, I think, you're going to have to be to get into the playoffs, you're going to have to beat Minnesota. You're going to have to beat one of Minnesota, the Jazz. So Portland, Minnesota, the Jazz, Dallas, and Golden State.
Yep. I tell you, Minnesota is a team to me that they Gobert's out. I'm like, oh, that'll open up paint for Edwards, right? Your Cat's out. Oh, that'll open it up for Edwards. They're both out and they put up 150 points. Made absolutely no sense.
I think the problem is that I'm a Gobert fan, right?
Yep.
But I do think that when you have to use him a very particular way on offense, and I don't, weird. I mean, it's one of those things where like it hasn't worked as it should. Um, and I don't, I don't know. I'm like, it's a very strange team. Like, it just feel like that
They gotta
Gobert
move.
marriage isn't great,
They
right?
got to move one or the other. As far as I'm concerned, it's not. I would keep personally. I'd keep Gobert. Send Cat to a team in the East that needs a center.
And you can probably get more asked. Like, so like, would you offer Cat for like a Miles Turner and Tyrese Halliburton and see
yeah,
if Indiana bites? Like, and look, if I can get like, I love Tyrese Halliburton. Tyrese Halliburton, like, yeah, like I feel like maybe you can throw in D'Angelo Russell or somebody else too, and like get like, because I do think that like what they kind of need, right, is they need like a primary ball handler.
right.
Effectively, that team kind of like at this point, like who's their ball handler right now? It's like I think Anthony Edwards isn't quite ready to be the guy who brings up the ball and like does go out to lunch occasionally. So it's kind of weird. The
Yep.
one that's been the better fit's gonna be interesting. And I kind of figured when I did my recent pod was like I think Donovan Mitchell and Cleveland's great
Yeah.
because it's the perfect team for him because that team has an incredibly solid rim defense, right? And they have these guys work around. They just did not have a guy who could be the ball handler. And like putting Don, or I used to jokingly call him Onovit, right? Because he has no D. But putting him on a team, this is like putting Kyrie on the Celtics at one point, like where like putting him on a team that has like the defense behind him, takes pressure off, then he's just doing help stuff. And
Yeah.
it just is a team that makes sense. Obviously, I think Cleveland isn't going to come out. I do think Cleveland could surprise one of the top two seeds make these conference finals, or like the Bucks and Celtics wind up facing each other. They're a team that could totally make the Eastern Conference final if they're healthy. And I thought this last year too, because again, if you look at that team and you look at that coaching staff, that is a team roster wise that makes sense. Like if you're a coach or like you're putting it together, like that Cleveland team makes sense, right?
Yep.
You got the two defenders, got like the guy on the ball, you've got the help guys, you got Kevin Love coming off the bench. Is Rubio healthy right now?
I don't
I
think
missed that. I don't know if he's playing. Is he back?
I don't think he is.
Yeah, but like once you had Ricky on there, right? Like that second, you like what that team. Once you had Ricky coming off, like which is what they were doing last year, like had him off the bench and have him come off and like run the second unit with like Mobley. Like yeah, that team gets like it's fun and it makes sense as a roster. Like it's not like say like Brooklyn, which like Brooklyn's doing well, but Brooklyn is still kind of credit to their coaching staff because that team is like a bit of a mess, right?
Well, the irony
It's funny
is
that like
the irony is that Ak Vaughn is, this team has so much offense with him not being able to hit a jumper. But at any rate, I digress.
well, no, it's like
He missed his
what's the
first.
name of,
Was it
what's the name of the Nets coach now? What's his name?
Jacques Vaughn?
Jack Vaughn. Yeah, like I remember
Or as we
before,
called him, Ak Vaughn, because he missed his first
but no, but the thing with Jack Vaughn is like you remember like he was the interim coach at one point too. Like and
Yeah.
before they brought in Nash, every time he's coached his team, he's shown me at least that dude, I want Jack Vaughn coaching my team because like they show up and they're professional back. Right? And honestly, this is a fucking mess of a situation roster wise. But they're playing really well with him because like he's a guy who kind of gets things going well, right? So credit to him. I don't know why but I mean, I know why because like Durant, Kyrie wanted Nash, but fuck, Jack Vaughn is a guy. He's better than the situation.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Nash is, for what they needed.
Would you want Jack Vaughn to coach the Pistons?
Next year, not this year. Speaking of underachieving teams, I know that they're supposed to be better than last year, which they are technically. Like win total wise, they have more wins now than they did last year. However, Kid Cunningham just had surgery; he's out for the year, and so it's gonna, it's gonna be a disappointing year no matter what because you don't have your best player. So, I think I have a suspicion that this will be Casey's last year, if not second to last year, and then he'll go in the front office. That's my prediction on what'll happen in Detroit. And if a coach like Otto's available, I mean, like we need better defense. Bottom line, we're one of the bottom two teams in the league, I believe, in defensive rating. We show flashes of it. It's just the roster's not built for that. You got Duran, who's a great shot blocker. and sometimes badly, but not always. And that's our entire rim protection that we have. So we're not set up. It's not set up for that. So again, depleted, but there will be an upgrade at coach at some point.
Was it you that I talked to and said that I'd rather be the Magic than the Pistons
Yeah.
roster wise? Actually, like, you know what? Paolo Banchero is actually so good. He's good.
He's very good.
He's good. I think Fultz is actually like, I mean, I don't think he's ever going to be like he was touted coming in, but he's been a serviceable basketball player. I like Bowl. I like what they've done with that team.
Yeah. They don't have a point guard. Still don't have a good point guard.
I mean, I might like the thing I would do with that team is I'd probably do whatever I could with Isaacs. I don't want Isaacs anywhere close to this roster.
Yeah, we talked about him last time. He's just like, he's bad news. Like he's like lesser Kyrie.
Don't bring keep these head cases away from like these like this team is like, you know, they have real basketball players, and Paolo Banchero, like having a guy like Banchero could be like the best guy on the court, right? Yep. Is a big win, right? They got that. It's good, and then they're moving in the right direction. So like clean out it's time to start like clear out the I like how they picked up a bunch of guys with projects who have potential.
Yep.
And took bets on those. And I think what you do now is clear out the guys who are, you know, not part of the culture, and keep kind of getting more pieces and more assets to build around. But I mean, I think they're like, I think I probably bet the over this year, and I'll be on the over for that next year because I do think they have some. It's a kind of interesting. And I'm not saying they're going to like make playoffs this year, but like they're going to be competitive most nights, right? That's the thing.
Right.
That's like they're in a better spot. Like the teams are like in that like -3 p.m. range. It's like it's them in Washington, and like the Bulls are like -2. But I think they're in a better spot than Washington or the Bulls, right?
Yeah.
Even though like, I mean, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just saying, let's move on. So I want to talk about, are there any player narratives that you see around the league that are true, false, proven to be right? Anything that stands out to you this many games into the season? Because we're about third way. Yeah.
I mean, I think the Tatum MVP one is interesting. I buy it, particularly now that they're out, like they have playing that well. I think that like you know, I think Giannis and the Bucks. I'm surprised by Giannis and the Bucks, even though the team is so old. That is one of the older teams in the league, basically like still being as competitive in season.
I mean, it's
really
him.
Impressed by
I mean, him and Lopez. You know, I can't. Every time I watch watch him play, there's at least there's a handful of plays every game where he just does superhuman things. You're just like, how in the hell did he? He did one dribble and made down the entire court. How?
He to me is easily the best player in the league because like if you get in a series with him, you don't beat him, you survive it.
Yeah.
Right. You're effectively, you know, he is that good. As I mentioned, I mean, I like Cleveland as a young team, kind of get upstarts, maybe get a little too further than they should. I don't think they're not making the finals, but I do like that. I think the Embiid for MVP thing is kind of dead at this point. Yeah. They were talking about that last year. That whole story with Trae Young kind of like being unhappy with his coach is interesting. Let's see. I'm just going to the East and looking through everything.
Yeah.
I like Memphis might be my team where I think that they could surprise. I might like start looking at their win the West odds final because I do think this might be the year, right? Memphis has kind of been flirting with that. They've been low key, like, you know, they've been top 3 team. And last year they made it really far, but then they got hurt. I do think this might be the year where they kind of go over the hump, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't trust Phoenix in the series.
No.
I think the Pelicans are too young. The Clippers are too fragile.
I still believe that Alvarado exposed Chris Paul. You pressure him and he can't do a damn thing. So all that leadership, all that, last 2 minutes of the game, we're the best team. By putting pressure on him, screws it all up. And if but we know how the NBA is.
Let's be fair. You're putting pressure on what 37, 38-year-old Chris Paul. I mean, that's again, like if Alvarado had done this like 5 years ago, Chris Paul would have been alive. I think that like what they did, which is bump him, this point in his career, he does not have the speed that he used, like the lateral speed that he used to, and like the physicality to get through that. He can't take that many.
So I
shots,
think it
right?
goes back. We talked about it before, I think, which is, name a team with two better guards in the West than Memphis. And that supports your argument for them making the Western Conference Finals. I mean, that's how I look at it. Chris Paul and Booker. Booker, absolutely. Chris Paul, no. Too old. That's
But Booker's been kind of like when Booker's had to kind of carry, like, would I rather have Booker or Ja Morant? I would rather have Ja Morant. I'm not even thinking about it. I want Ja. For Ja, to me, in these big games, has been just like when these moments come up, he is just insanely good, right? Whereas Booker has had a tendency to disappear in some games, right? Because I do think you can get more to Booker in these big moments. Like Ja basically will just he's when you need a buck, like it's funny because he's so fast and he's so good at getting to the rim or getting contact when going to the rim. Like he is like Prime Westbrook used to be like that. You just knew he could get to either the bucket or the line or both, right? And
Yep.
essentially in these games, that's like really important. Having that
Yep.
one guard like can actually get to the hole and get you that easy bucket is important. Like it's the value of Kevin Durant has similar value for the Warriors. He's like the guy, like just give him the ball. He's gonna either like get a shot, or like quality shot off, or get to the line, right? Like in the
Right.
half court. And ultimately, that has like real value in that situation. It's
Well,
kind of
that's-
why I like. I mean, like the Pelicans are interesting to me if, but they go as far as Zion figuring out how to get easy buckets when the pressure clamps down, right? That's if Zion figures out how to easily basically use his weight and his size to get easy buckets in that crunch time defense, then that really is going to make a real difference for that Pelicans team playoffs.
Right.
I think they're probably a year away.
Yep.
The Kings are really interesting. I went to watch a Kings and Knicks, and the Kings starters are clearly better. Were clearly better than the Knicks starters, but the Kings bench, they're missing a couple guys.
Yeah.
You know who the best player on offense and defense was on this is the year 2022. Who the best player on their bench?
I know the answer to that. I think I know the answer to this one. Harrison Barnes.
No, Harrison Barnes was starting, man.
Bench
Harrison
player.
Barnes was starting. We're talking about it was Matty D, man. It was Matty D was the best, clearly the best player on offense and defense for the Kings bench for that game. We were like, watching this, we're like, holy crap. And I like them, but it's a bunch of guys who'd be like the great as 6 to 8 on a contender.
Right.
And they kind of, it's good. It's better than the bit, but they kind of need it'd be good. Like if they had Tally Salva, like it'd probably be better. I get why they made the trade. God, really trading Albert. What were you doing?
You brought up you brought up Westbrook and Morant as guys that can get by people. And I think it's worth mentioning.
Westbrook used to.
Used to. Well, the younger version of both of those guys is on my Pistons and Jaden Knight, because he is just that guy is a bullet coming out of a barrel at full speed, and he backs guys up, and most guys cannot stay with him. And when he's in the open court, he's doing stuff that I before the season started, I bought 2K for the first time in 10 years. And so I start playing it. And I'm like, you know what? I'll take Detroit. Why not? See how they play, because they're not all rated super high. I think Cade's like a low 80s player. But why not? Let's see how they play. And all I did was push the ball. And it was Ivy most of the time. And they watched his game clearly in college, because he's just super fast. He goes up, he's acrobatic with the ball, he finishes, and then it always ends up on his back, like every single time. But he's someone who, and this isn't a video game, obviously, it's not real life, but if you watch the games, it looks exactly the fucking same, where he's just like flying down the court. It looks like he's got he's got jetpack on. He's so fast, but he's not, if you look at where Ja is, he's clearly nowhere near that level yet. He's going to take some time. He's a rookie, time to develop all that stuff. The other player that I want to talk, that I want to make sure I mention, because I'd be remiss if I did. After Tim Bontemps slammed him, was Killian Hayes. And I think I messaged you the other night when they played Charlotte. He had 25 points, had 5 threes. When he plays with confidence, he looks like a legitimate NBA player. Like not, decent. He looks good. And there was a point at which they played in Boston. He was going right at Tatum. He was trying to shoot mid ranges over him and doing it with mostly dribbling. He'd attack him, and then he would do behind the back through the legs, like the literal dribbling drills that I coach kids on their handles. He's doing this drill right in front of one of the best players in the NBA, and then drains a mid range over him. So I want to see that continue for him, because if he does, the narrative, he was the worst player in the NBA for the first 10 games of the season by far. But he's really picked it up. And so I think, like I said, Detroit has something there. It's just too bad they had the setback and what have you. So I want to get to the teams that need to blow it up, because I think there are several. We could probably do an entire pod just on that. But if you had to pick 3 teams that you think should blow it up, who would you pick?
I think Toronto's one where you're probably past the expiration date on this team.
Oh my God, I'm shocked. I had them too, but I'm surprised he put them in there.
But I mean, think about so what is the upside for how is this team winning a title? What are they like? I like Scott. See, I think the problem is they have a bunch of guys who are on timelines. So I think I want to keep Scotty, right? But I really am thinking about I at least entertain phone calls for Pascal Siakam.
Yeah.
And I definitely, for him and FBB, I entertain phone calls. Right? What are we kind of, can I get something decent and maybe pick some assets and kind of reset my timeline a little bit? Because again, I'm how am I winning? How am I winning title? Or how am I going for this team? This is a team that they went far, but are they, there? I don't see the path going forward for this team now. And again, they're Masai must know this, and I would trust him to figure it out. But you definitely kind of need to figure out what you do with the roster as you currently have. So that was one for me. Give me.
There's well, I just want to just stick on that for 1 second. Tatum is playing 37 minutes a game, and now he's not. Fred VanVleet, 36.8 minutes a game. Now he's injured. OG Anunoby's at 36.7. If you look at the top 40 players who played, I forget the percentage of games I looked at, but if you look at the top 40 players, Toronto has 2 in the top 3 and 39 is Scotty Barnes. So they're riding these guys. Nurse is riding these guys, which is crazy because his entire thing was I'll walk into a G League game not knowing who the hell is showing up and we're going to be competitive or win. And then now he's doing the exact opposite, where he's riding these guys because he's not willing to play other players. So Raptors are on my list. I have Charlotte on there. I think
you think Nurse might be on the hot seat?
I think it's very. Take away Kawhi and what have they done really other than be good? They've been good. Don't get me wrong, but you're riding the top players to injuries.
I think
maybe.
Honestly, this is a Spo situation where I don't think that those players are as good as Nurse makes them look. And same thing as same with Miami guys. I don't think when you trade them, they're not going to be as good as what you have when they're in Miami, the Heat system, right? Or it's the same with good teams. I do think that I definitely have Nick Nurse. If I definitely have a coach. But I do think you definitely should be listening to offers, right? Reasonable offers, not Laker. Oh, I'm going to trade you these 3 league deal.
Pedrick Nunn
and make me a reasonable offer. Offer me something that I can use to maybe get Victor. You said Charlotte.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about Toronto, just to close that one out, is that their half court offense is terrible, and they play. They play. Their offensive ratings 14th. The defensive is 17th. They're just not great at anything. And they're still a 500 or better team. But something's got to happen there, whether they get rid of, I would definitely agree about building around Barnes and just Siakam's. The talk earlier was well, what if KD's unhappy? should they make a move and send some of their picks to get KD, and that way Brooklyn can restock? Well, now Brooklyn is playing well, and KD is playing out of his mind. So that door seems to be shut for now. Charlotte, I thought that Bridges getting the domestic violence charges really fucked their season, quite frankly. And they got Mason Plumlee as their starting center, so they're not serious. No offense to him, good player, but he's clearly a backup center. And they're last in the league in second chance points, and they're awful on defense. Well, you don't get second chance points when you're giving up dunks and layups. So those things go hand in hand pretty much. And they get the one other thing about them, it's a misleading stat. They give up the fewest fast break points. Well, right, everyone's scoring in the half court on them, so there is no fast break to be had. So
Okay, but who do you move?
I mean, I think
Everyone?
pretty much everyone but LaMelo. I mean, everyone should be on the tape except LaMelo.
Are you paying LaMelo?
Well, if you move
do you
everyone,
move
you'll have the cap space.
I mean, it's an interesting kind of situation. I mean, I would still listen to offers, even for LaMelo, right?
Yeah.
Even like, I'm not convinced. I mean, I love LaMelo. I think he's a star. I'm not convinced. It's the SCA situation. Like I
Right.
saw Shea Gilgeous. I saw him live. He's amazing. He's
Yeah.
one of the top. He looks like a top 5 player in the league. But I mean, I think OKC is further down the path of like being respectable. Now that they got like a really good player out. What's God, the guy that was number one, number
Giddy?
no, not Giddy. The big tall kid that got hurt. The Breezes, from the whatever. College kid came in this season, was a rookie this season, got hurt.
Chet Holmgren.
Chet. Yeah, so I think with Chet and like Giddy and like Poke, the Thunder are further down the path than I think the Hornets are. They got a bunch of older guys. I mean, why do they need Gordon Hayward? Like, there's a bunch of guys. I agree with it. They should kind of think about blowing it up. We talked about the Wizards, but the Wizards seems like an easy answer. But yeah, it does seem like that team, like, yeah, they're not overachieving anymore. There's the only guy on that team that I might consider keeping is Denny, man. Denny's probably the only guy I consider keeping.
Interesting.
If somebody offered me something for Porzingis or Beal, I think I'm good one.
Yeah,
I'm like Beal at 29. Like, if I'm the Wizards, what do I want with Beal at 29? He's 29. Like, what do I want? Like 29 and like 43 million. Like,
I think the league is in a weird place right now, and there's not a ton of guys. The teams have not decided that they're going to blow it up yet, and so everyone's kind of standing pat outside of your usual John Collins rumors, etc. Everyone's kind of standing pat, but then you look at the rosters, like how why would you stand pat? This Hornets team, even with LaMelo, like there's no statistically. Is anybody in the top 100 on this team outside of LaMelo? I mean, what are you doing? It's a bunch of reserves.
I mean, Rozier
guys who'd be a backup.
Rozier probably would be a top 100 player.
I don't like, but as point guards go in the league, is he a top 5 point guard? Top 10?
No, he's probably like a top 10, probably borderline top 10, maybe like 12 or something like that.
I just don't see what they have that's like I'm building around outside of LaMelo. I don't see what they're building around. He's a second-year player. Like, it's not like 2 seasons under his belt. It's not like he's 29 or was like Pascal Siakam. He's young enough where you could do some things quickly, but I just don't know what teams want these guys. I mean, realistically, there's a lot of guys here that
I think you
could be traded, but what teams are going to give you anything of value in return?
I mean, you can probably move Hayward to like the Mavs or something.
Like, do you see more than like a 2nd round pick or maybe a player like for any of these guys?
No. It's like any other term between. It's interesting because, like, okay, let's say these guys are the Wizards decide to blow it up. The Wizards decide to blow it up. Okay, so who's taking Beal, Porzingis, or Kuzma. Actually, Kuzma's probably the most
Kuzma,
tradable piece.
yeah, I agree. Kuzma.
Although I don't, Kuzma's, is he that much value? It's Kyle Kuzma's like, what is he really that much value? Really?
I could see him
Really?
being. I could see him being a nice player, a complimentary player on a championship team. Sure, I could see it.
I'm looking at these like
Not as a star, but as a complimentary player, absolutely, I could see it.
So Charlotte, Washington, and what was the other team that decided to blow up? Toronto, right?
Toronto.
I'll see what my system's telling me in terms of like who's the most
three
valuable.
mids.
So Siakam is definitely the most valuable of these guys. Jordan Goodwin is rated pretty highly. Dale Gafford's rated pretty high by my thing. Thad Young, surprisingly. Brad Beal, Monty Morris, Gordon Hayward, Plumlee. I'm just like telling you the guys like, and Theo Maledon. Everybody else is like negative right player, right?
Yeah.
I'd probably think about, I like Barnes. He's young, do things. LaMelo has been hurt, so the defense. But again, like it's weird when you're looking at like somebody like LaMelo. He's getting rated poorly for defense, but again, who is the weird part with Charlotte is you have to take the defensive numbers for Charlotte like with a grain of salt, because who is their center again?
Mason Plumlee.
And what happens when you
Piston legend Mason Plumlee?
Well, the problem is like when you have a shitty. That's one of the things they talk about defensive stats. Defensive stats really on the player are tricky because effectively the way this works is you have the guy who's on the, like, you think about modern NBA defense. You have the guy who's on the ball. And coach, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you have the guy who's on the ball, right?
Yep.
So there's a line that goes from the ball to the hoop. And on defense, there should be a guy who's like at the top of the rim, at the top of the key on the ball. And there should be a guy who is the primary defender, the rim. There's a line between that. There's a guy who is helping at the rim, who is your help defender at the rim. You have your primary wing, like your help defender, who's basically sliding between the bottom and the top. And then you have like the extra guy who's really kind of the guy who's like covering the threes on the line and whatnot. It's where you hide people. And effectively, like if like say LaMelo, I'm assuming like looking at Charlotte, but I'm going to assume LaMelo is probably close to being either like he's going to end up being like at the top of the key defending or going to help like as a primary help guy, because really they don't have anybody else that are Gordon Hayward.
Yeah, I'd put him off ball, but helping on drives because he's got good hands for reach. You know, he can reach against.
Yeah, but if you do that, you're gonna put Scary Terry on like the top of the. That's the problem.
Yeah, right? There's nobody else.
If you
playing this roster with Mitch,
if you have to move LaMelo, it's like my system's rating badly on defense. I'm like, yeah, but if I have to move him out of the secondary role to the primary role, and the guy behind him makes him Plumlee, of course, like you need to be a fucking defensive god not to be bad in that situation. Right. Because like you're out of position, and then the guy behind you sucks. So effective. I mean, you don't have help behind you because like if you know this, you play basketball. If I'm playing basketball and I'm covering the guy who has the ball, I can't trust the guy behind me, then I'm fucked because essentially I can't get. If I let him get by me, like effectively I'm hosed. So I either have to foul him or do like so. It just changes the way you have to cover these things.
We started off the season in Detroit with Marvin Bagley as our starting center. So it was we had no rim protection. It was a layup line. He just was a shot block.
I used to argue about this with like Kevin Love. They're like, oh, Kevin Love's a bad defense. Like Kevin Love is your primary rim protector. He sucks. But like when he was in Cleveland and the Cleveland wasn't putting him in like primary, they had him like on help occasionally.
He was covering the wing shooter. Yeah, cover the wing shooter. He's
tall. Yeah. He's tall and he's got good vision. Like, all he has to do is basically like get in the way of pass and be the help. It's the same.
Do you think that I think it's hard in the West to say blow up one of those teams because it's so much parity. Like, I mean, that one trade to swing things. No,
the Warriors have to move there. So they have to clear out these young guys. They should take anything for Wise. Literally anything for. Just take anything as long as you don't have to play Wise. I really don't like what's the name of the other guy? The other kid they drafted.
Kuminga.
I forget his name. Yeah, Kuminga's not good either. So it's like, San Antonio is in here to like get Victor. Houston, same.
Yep.
So I can't
the
say
Mavs are missing a number 2 for Luke. A number 2 goes alongside with Luka. So
yeah, the Mavs are the one that's, but the Mavs already the Mavs already pulled up, right? The Mavs. The problem with them is like, so they got further than they should have last year with, but this is the season. Like the last season, we were all down on, but this is the season where it's actually been a fucking problem, right? It's like he came in and the change kind of made a difference. But I think this season is where you're like, okay, this doesn't really make sense, right? Luca is an all-world talent, but you know, what is this team?
Yeah.
Utah's interesting because like Utah already blew it up, but I mean, I think they have like I think Utah. If anybody's gonna make a trade, it's gonna be Utah because Danny is cool. Like Danny will listen to your phone calls. Danny will trade his players. Danny has a bunch of guys on that team that are easy to get relatively.
Yep.
In terms of like roster price, and they're all gonna like let's look at this roster. The most expensive player on the team is 22 million for Mike Conley. Come on, if you're the Mavs, why the fuck wouldn't you like try to get Mike Conley?
Yep.
Like, I mean, yeah, he's 35. He's 22 million. Like, telling me like Mike Conley wouldn't immediately be like the best long ball defender on the Mavs?
Yep.
Like, I'm not a Sexton fan.
I didn't like
Laurie. Like, there's a bunch of guys on this team that like they're all guys who be out for too. Like Mike Conley, Mark Cuban, Malik Beasley, Jordan Clarkson, Kelly Olynyk, like even Horton Tucker, like Rudy. Like this is a team. Like this is the easiest. If I'm looking for some assistance or like rounding out of my roster to make a run, I am definitely calling. Like I'm gonna have to give some shit, but I'm definitely calling. Like if I'm Philly, like if you're Philly, why would you want Mike Conley? Like I don't know what they're trading for, but like you know what I mean.
Yep.
Like,
I think a lot of teams are right now are in this holding pattern, either because they weren't fully healthy or they've just it's like the Clippers, just haven't had a full roster. Or I think there's teams there. I think as the season progresses, the trade talks will pick up. But I also like there's a lot of good young talent. So then you start thinking like, who do I want to? The teams aren't going to part with those guys. So then it's like, all right, well, who do you want from the Charlotte Hornets, Wizards, whomever? And then what do you have asset wise that's even worth sending them away? Do you know what I mean? It just feels like a very weird time in the NBA because there's so much good young talent. You used to be the young guys would take a long time to develop. And so you needed these guys who had the 5 to 10 years of experience. Let's trade for them. You move it to rental. But now you're like, well, I'm not giving you my young guy because they're actually playing. This Shaden Sharp is playing. Like guys who are 18 and 19 are playing and starting in the NBA now. So I think it's just a shift that's happening that it wasn't this way 5 years ago.
Let me throw you a fake friend. Evan Fournier, who's got like this year and next year at 18 million, and then like a team option at 18, and like a one probably like top 6 protected from the Knicks to the Jazz for Mike Conley. Who's that? No, that's not terrible.
No, it's not terrible. It does add defense.
And the Knicks really do like the Knicks really do need like somebody.
Yeah. I can see how.
Because God, I watched that team. They had nobody to fucking shoot the ball. Like they're like I'm looking at the teams who are like that dead zone, and I know the Knicks look for a guard. And so yeah, I mean like Fournier has been Fournier at this point is basically just like a walk contract.
Yeah,
I don't.
He played well over the summer, in Eurobasket, but it's not. Debs is all the vets on the bench, and
I would rather have like even the Nets are team. Another like again, I'm looking at Conley, but like Nets are another team. Well, I use a guy like Conley.
Yeah.
How much you trust Kyrie? Right? The trick on them is like, I mean, would I cash in Kyrie? Try to see if I could get but like Danny's not going to take Kyrie.
No.
He's not gonna do that. And then Kyrie in Utah would be like very fun.
It would be something. It'd be a reality show.
It would be a freaking disaster. Like I don't know. I mean, like, go ahead.
I was going to ask you: do you think there are any coaches on the hot seat? We said you mentioned Nurse earlier. Is there anyone else that you think?
I think Nurse is probably where it's. I think.
What about McMillan? What about Nate?
Yeah.
What about Nate in Atlanta?
Man, he fought with his star, but he did make it. It does seem like they half settled it. But like, if that team kind of goes to the shitter, then yeah, I can see it because I do like that. I do like the Hawks roster is nice, but like, okay, so part of the trick on this is like, okay, so like, yeah, I'm getting rid of. Is there somebody ready in Atlanta, or would Atlanta be more likely to see if like Nick Nurse gets fired to try to get building like during the offseason, right?
Right.
So
right.
I do think Nate might be in trouble between seasons. Probably, I do think Nate is in trouble between seasons, but I don't see him being in trouble in season yet because there isn't anybody to bring in to kind of like juice it up and make it better.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I'm looking at it. I don't. I mean, the Pistons aren't going to fire Case.
No,
Casey. Makes no sense to fire
everybody there knows what the situation is. Let's put it that way. You know, they know where they're at. They can't control Cade's injury. So it's kind of like, hey, another development year. Good. Let's
I mean,
see if Killian can play. And
if the Dallas situation went to hell, really went to hell, then I could see Dixon Kidd getting fired.
Yeah. And the commonality between both of those last two examples, unhappy superstar. So
right. I mean, like that's kind of the trick. It has to be a situation where, like, there aren't under contract. There's a better option or a super. Like it has to be somebody important has to be unhappy.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to make sense. I mean, again, I don't see Nick Nurse getting fired. I don't see. I'm just looking at this. So like, I don't see the Bulls firing the coach.
That's the other team. The Bulls are the other one that's kind of the obvious need to blow it up, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, but Jerry Ransom is so cheap that I don't.
Right.
Jerry Ransom's not paying to be like, he'll fire you after the season, but there's no reason for him to like kind of do that at this point. Like, yeah, I mean, like, yeah, you trading DeMar makes sense, but like, whatever. Trading DeMar makes some sense. I'd rather have the Jazz players, but like, DeMar and what's his name? God, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. DeMar,
Bull or Jazz. Oh, Zach LaVine, yeah.
Zach LaVine or hell Bushwick. There's like three guys. There's some. Well, hell, I mean, if I could get the Bulls to give me Alex Caruso, yeah. I think any team in the league that can get the Bulls to give them Alex Caruso should go ahead and do that. Right?
Yeah.
That is a big like Celtics. I'd take Alex Caruso. Like the Bucks would love to have a guy like Alex. I mean, they're not what they're paying for him, but like, yeah, I mean, that is an attractive trade. So I don't know that they should trade him, but like, yeah, there's like, if you're a contender, you get Caruso to shore up your on ball defense. You definitely go ahead and do that. It's not like prohibitive expensive.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this and going like, there's no real like. There's a bunch of guys who are exceeding. I don't think Darvin Ham's not getting fired.
No,
Stephen Kerr is not at fault in Golden State. He should get fired. The Thunder are. It is what it is. Pop, it is what it is. The Rockets, It is what it is. I mean, there isn't, like I said, I think Casey gets fired after the season, or he probably leaves after I think he's planning to retire after the season, or like move to the front office. So, I mean, it is a weird season because I'm looking at these things and going like, yeah, they're like the only one I see is Nurse. I mean, it would be stupid of them to do it in season because actually, yeah, if they did get rid of Nurse, then I could definitely see like some other team going like, you know what? I'd like that.
Right.
But right now, do you think there's anybody like that we missed on this? I mean,
no, I can't see that. I think we hit on the not the obvious ones, but some of the more probable or likely to happen, but it's still we're early in the season. Let's see if there's a collapse. If there's a collapse, at the midway point, then maybe someone else happens. But the early season pods are fun because you can speculate and all those things. But the reality is it's going to play out. And it's, like I said, I think the NBA is in a weird place right now that it's not been in a long time, if ever, where these kids are coming in. And I see kids respectfully, but 18 and 19-year-olds coming into the league and being productive, right away, or starting in some cases. That's rare. And again, I've said this from day one.
Well, I mean, I think
Pistons Twitter. I've told them like, you are not beating Giannis. You're not beating Tatum. Who cares if Cade has surgery? Let other guys develop, right? Not in any rush.
One thing that is, my personal theory on the reason that is because it's not NCAA kids anymore coming in at 18. You're getting a lot more of these national players that are coming up through the academies and playing pro ball when they're 16, right? So they're playing international pro ball when they're 16. So by the time they it's a Luka thing. By the time Luka got to the league, Luka had already played played for the national team, played against NBA talent. He played in Euro Cup, played in Euroliga, he played in La Liga finals. So effectively, he's coming he's been playing against pros. not one of these. It's not an 18-year-old kid coming in who's played like a season in the stupid Big Ten. No, it's a guy who's played in like La Liga, or he's played like in like big international world competition. And effectively, because I do think that like the NCAA is a bad place to train NBA players, because you're training. It's really weird because if you're playing prep, you're playing a style that is closer to the NBA than you do when you go to the NCAAs. You're playing a style that is the least NBA style basketball you can play. Yep. Playing in Australia is more NBA style. Playing in Spain is more NBA style. Playing in China is more NBA style than playing, like, say, in the Big Ten, right? So effectively, it's like for basketball players, it's like taking a year off and going to play something called basketball, but not really, right? I mean, think about it. The shot clock's different. The play calling's different. Yeah. The line's different. The 3-point line's different. It's whistled differently. It's really, I mean, like, it doesn't look like, I mean, if you look at the rules, FIBA versus NBA versus NCAA, NCAA is the one where you're like, this isn't really that applicable to everything else. So yeah, like the kids would come in from the NCAA, like, or I mean, like, to his credit, like Shadow is really good. Yeah. But a lot of these international kids are coming in to like be more ready because they're playing a much more similar style at a much higher level in terms of competition. And so that does make a difference. It's like it happened a little bit. What's happened in the NFL where like kids coming in from like the from the SEC are coming in there. There isn't big of a difference from playing like Alabama twice a year and going in and playing the fucking Command, right? In terms of practice, in terms of the ability of these players, so that there's a level, right? So, and I think that's the same thing that's happening here. You have these kids who are coming in, and they're more comparable. Yep. Want to talk awards? Like, what do you got for MVP right now?
Oh, I haven't even started. I mean, there's you've got Jokic, Giannis, Tatum. I mean, there's so many guys playing so well.
I agree that
the numbers are fucking insane. Like the offensive numbers.
The books have a Tatum and Giannis, and I kind of agree with them right now. They're tied. They're basically even up, and I think that's the play because Luka's not going to win enough. Doncic has more help, and I think ultimately it might come down to which team wins the 1 seed if both are healthy through the entire season. That is my early read on the. I think rookie they've got Banchero, and I think
it's everybody. It's him and everybody else.
It's like lock it in, let's get through. He is just. He is putting up some crazy, and you watch it, he looks like a star, right? This is a kid, and you're like, you watch, oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Defensive player of the year.
I was going to 6
more.
Defensive player of the year. Lopez right now is in the lead. You can't. It's hard to argue. I can see again early in the season. I think it's kind of Brooks number 1. Jaren Jackson Jr. number 2, Giannis.
I kind of agree with it because he's been the difference between like the Bucks had a rough season last year, and in large part it was because Brook was hurt.
Yep.
And so the defense wasn't quite as good. And I think him being back has made a huge difference because again, it lets Giannis shift, right? It lets Giannis, he can be the primary rim, but he can also go up and he can also help. It just makes that defense just way more destructive. When he's there, right? Like it's it is a combination. So I agree with it. They got like Shea as the most improved or Tyrese. And I mean, having seen Shea live,
it's hard to argue.
Like, Shea is just so freaking good. I mean, although theoretically to me, Tyrese Halliburton is the most true, but I get why Shea is the better player. But I mean, like, I don't think Shea wasn't bad last year. This isn't like Shea didn't automatic, like you're just seeing it more because Steve didn't.
Right.
And then 6-man, they got Russell Westbrook.
Russ
is probably locked for 6-man of the year.
Yeah.
Unless something weird happens. Let's see. Who do you have winning the East?
Winning the East?
If you had to guess. Right.
Based on how Tatum's hurt, so it's it'd be the Bucks if he's not available. But if he's available, I think it's gonna be. I think it's. So I think I would go on a limb and say 7-game series, and it's Bucks come out ahead. But it's
I got Boston ahead because Rob is back. So if Rob is back, and looks good, and Tatum's back, then I do think Boston wins that series, right? But it is going to be a 7-game war.
Yeah.
And, anything can happen. And whoever wins, I do think it should be like whoever wins that should be the +1, should be -150 to win the title.
Yeah.
And then I think out of the West, you know what? Right now I probably like the Clippers to come out West.
Vegas likes it too. So yeah,
I Vegas likes the Suns, but like if it's a series between the Suns and the Clippers, and like I'm probably, I mean, there is, the line will probably be the Suns, and I will take the plus money and the Clippers and Tyronn Lue against the Suns. I'm sorry. I mean, because it'll just be the smarter bet, because I think Lue could basically steal like 3 games. And then like, Scott Foster will come in and like fuck Chris Paul, and that's
what's your take on renaming all these awards and coming up with, new ones and all that stuff?
I mean, it's fine as long.
I think the awards look stupid. I think they all look the same.
Oh,
it's a piece of glass with a thing in the middle. There's no like, I don't see some shit you could buy online from like Best of Prey. No offense, Rick, but they don't look. I think the design of them is just not good.
I mean,
Michael Jordan's missing an arm in his, isn't he? Like,
naming these awards after the most famous winners, like, I mean, the Finals award after Bill Russell and the MVP after Michael Jordan is good. I mean, like, that's, it make it, with the, although, I mean, like, Jordan versus, and again, I get why Jordan's an owner versus LeBron, he's still a player, and still,
right.
But yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, like, something like, I mean, I don't know, like, something like Rookie of the Year, kind of weird because you can only win it once. Unless you name it after, like, you can name it after Russell, who was the first Rookie of the Year, or something,
right?
Wilt or something. But I mean, like, fine. I mean, it's just, it is a way to honor these players. So, like,
I feel like it's the NBA is always looking for reasons to get talked about, and so it was like, I might as well throw this out there, see, get some discourse going about this. I think it's fine. I just, what's the Jerry West Award again?
I'm not even sure. What is it?
They made up a new award for Jerry West.
Best award, like GM of the Year or something? No,
it's
Shooting Guard of the Year. Okay.
Clutch Player of the Year award. That's what they call it.
No, it says Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame.
The Jerry West Award is Clutch Player of the Year.
Like, no, but there was already a Jerry West Award for the Naismith Hall of Fame.
Right.
Oh, but that was for college.
Yeah.
Clutch Player of the Year. Okay, that's weird.
That's an odd. Right?
They're probably going to give it to somebody who's like not clutch, because that's the way it works typically.
Right.
People are really bad at clutch.
Right.
I mean, I'd probably give it to Job, but
I just don't think it's necessary. It's like the whole point of not giving everyone an award is that everyone works harder to win one of the awards, not just make up new ones so that there's like a proliferation of, I don't know. Do we ever sit there and talk about who's the most clutch player of all time? And that's not even a discussion. It's Jordan. Don't even just say Jordan. Like, it's Robert Horry. Name it after Robert Horry.
I think the stats probably show it's LeBron. Probably, weirdly enough. Like,
well, then that also begs to what are they going? What's that? What are they going to create?
What is like? So there's, if you actually look in their primes, Chris Paul's offensive, like, so if a team had Chris Paul on the floor, his prime, in the fourth quarter, their offensive rating was off the fucking charts, right? But again, what are we judging at? Because again, that we get into the playoffs and get the whole of Scott Foster thing. Like, it's like you have to define. Okay, so what are we defining clutch as? Is it like within those last 2 minutes, like the offensive rating is off the charts when this guy is like involved? Then Jordan has an argument. Yeah, I mean, like, I really would like to look, but I would say Jordan and probably Dirk might be up there too, as guys who, like, and you want a guy who's effectively just putting insane pressure on the defense and raising defense, the efficiency of everyone. Dirk might be up there too. It's like MJ, Dirk, Wade was really fucking good, particularly in finals game in the clutch. So yeah, I mean, I'd be fine with Jordan being clutch guy. Yeah.
All right. Well, Arturo, another great pod from you. Thanks for coming on.
We did 2 hours. It's good.
Yeah. So remember, you can find both of us on Mastodon now. We're on the same server. We're on both on mastodon.social. I'm D. Binkowski. He's American Numbers. Give us a follow there. You can also visit davidbinkowski.com for more long form content. And if you like the Pistons and you want to watch a game with me, I'm not the host. It's Ku, Kahil, and Bryce. They both host different podcasts for the Pistons. Ku is through Lockdown Pistons. Bryce is with the Detroit Free Press called the Pistons Pulse. But it's a fun watch. It's usually less than 30 of us watching together and chatting together. It's on playback.tv. And thank you for listening to the David Binkowski podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And if you like this episode, please give us a 5-star rating. Thanks again.
Nice.